This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very interesting video for you. I will be rating my least to most favorite light scenarios when shooting a swimwear photo shoot. I'll be giving you a list, some tips, some pros and cons of what I like and what I don't like, how I manage the light, and so on. So if that's something that you want to see, stay tuned. Before we go though, make sure to subscribe to my channel and click the little bell button so not miss any of my future uploads. And let's get right into the video. Okay, so at number 4 is going to be my least favorite light setup, and that's going to be overcast lighting. So as you guys see in this photo shoot here, we were hoping for nice sunset. However, it didn't really happen. It was pretty overcast and meh. So we still worked with it. We still got some really nice photos, but I just wanted to show you kind of why it's my least favorite and how and what you can do to spice it up a little bit. So as you see here, again, we were hoping for a nice warm light. We didn't really get it. But the biggest thing for me whenever I'm shooting in a situation like this is to make sure that I have really nice foliage surrounding me, that I have something in the background that separates my model from the rest. Because as you see here, the light can be pretty overblown. The sky is going to look very gray and just not going to show as anything on photos. So if you take photos against the water, it's just going to look very boring and you don't really want that. So whenever I am in a situation like this, I always make sure that I pose my model against trees. As you see here, I put her in this little tree frame. So I was in the leaves and I was posing her. So I get some nice clean background and then she's framed within the leaves. I think it's a super nice technique to do because it gives you some separation of the model and the background. And then it has this really nice framing and it looks really interesting in that sense. The upside of this kind of light is that it's really easy to manage. It's not super challenging to do when it comes to photos. So if you're not super comfortable with taking images outside, I feel like this is one of the easiest setups for you to try. It's also super beneficial when you have a full day client shoot, for example, because the light is not going to be super contrasty. There's not going to be a lot of extreme highlights and shadows. I just find the photos are usually not as exciting as I would like it to be. For this particular shoot, I think we did it really well though, and I actually do really love the images because we got this soft golden light. I did also bring up my Kelvins in my camera to be slightly warmer, around, I think 8,000 Kelvins, just because I want to see how the images are going to look, kind of almost imitating golden hour, regardless of if you have the sun or not. So that would be my top tip, to definitely either find some interesting foliage, pose your model lower on the ground so you can, frame her within the sand. Just try and avoid as many white spaces as possible because it's not just exciting. And make your images look a bit warmer because it just always looks nicer. I don't know. I've never seen a swimwear photo shoot that looks really nice when it's super cold and, I don't know, wintry looking. You want it to be warm. You want it to be summery. So that's definitely the top tip for that. At number 3 is going to be a pretty surprising one, and I think a lot of people are going to be like, what? Have you watched your own channel? And that's understandable. I get it. However, let me explain. At number 3 is going to be direct sunlight. And again, I know that's mostly what I've been shooting for the last few years. But I have to say, I kind of changed my mind recently. I am feeling the softer vibes lately. And natural direct sunlight just isn't it for me right now. I'm not saying I will never shoot direct sunlight again. I definitely will, and I still do. However, I do implement it across other different styles of shooting. I don't feel like I have to shoot just direct sunlight to make my shoots look coherent, and I kind of like to experiment and play around. So when it comes to natural light, there's a few things that you can do to make sure that you get the nicest images you can, because it is definitely the most challenging lighting setup you can throw at yourself. I know as I was starting out, it was always super frustrating for me to try and figure out direct sunlight. I would never be able to figure out what was wrong with my images, and I will tell you that the single most important thing you can do for yourself when shooting direct sunlight is picking the right time of day. And what do I mean by that? It's you have to shoot either first thing in the morning, and I mean super early, right after the sun rises, and if you want to shoot in the afternoon, maybe the hour or two before sundown. That's basically the best light you can get. Anything before that or after that is going to be really hard to manage. So there's definitely a few things you can do when it comes to direct harsh sunlight and how to minimize it if you do have to shoot in that kind of situation. And the first and top thing for me is to use the right direction for yourself. So what I mean by that is if your model is getting really harsh highlights and shadows on her, lean her back, get her to sit in the sand as you see here, or get her to lean against a rock. Because if she is more at an angle, if the sun is in the midday and it's coming down from the ground, you want her to be just straight on towards that light. You don't want her to be at an angle, you don't want her to be straight on. So just lean her a little bit. It's going to get rid of a lot of the really harsh highlights and shadows. It's going to make it way more manageable to get the photos looking right. Of course, it is limiting in terms of the poses you can do and how many poses you can do, but it is definitely doable. Another thing to consider is using natural reflectors. And what I mean by that is instead of using an actual reflector, I usually go, and as you see here, we are by the water. I just get her to stand in the water, and then the whitewash brings a lot of really nice soft light that bounces back to her face. And it does diffuse a lot of the shadows that are unwanted on her face. It does soften the whole appearance and so on. However, you don't always have access to that. I know that it's not always possible. So if you do have to use a reflector, which I usually don't, I would usually aim for using a white reflector instead of the silver or gold, because it can be pretty harsh and it can make your images look kind of blah, which I don't really like. So I do usually stick to just using a white reflector instead, and this way I get a really nice soft look in my images without the harshness and the contrast of the white reflector.
This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Are you looking to create a stunning website that showcases your brand and tells your story? Look no further than Squarespace. With their easy-to-use platform and beautiful templates, you can design a professional and modern website in a matter of hours. Squarespace is perfect for photographers, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. Don't let the lack of coding skills hold you back from creating a website that you'll be proud to show off. There are hundreds of fully customizable templates to choose so you can really make it your own. The platform is packed with features like e-commerce, SEO, and social media integrations, which is crucial when it comes to running your photography business. If you're like me and constantly on the phone or in meetings with clients, Squarespace offers you scheduling tools for your website as well. These tools allow you to create and manage appointments, bookings, and reservations through your Squarespace website. Your customers will be able to view your availability, schedule appointments, and pay for services directly at the site as well. If that sounds like something you'd like to try, make sure to go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and once you're ready to go, use my code squarespace.com/Anita.
Ad number 2 is one of my recent favorites, and that's sunset lighting. And I don't think I have to talk too much about sunset shoots because I feel like most photographers do them a lot. I've actually been pretty late to the game. I've only started doing sunset photo shoots maybe the last year or so, and I have to say I really enjoy doing them. It's definitely still challenging because of how warm the light becomes. Once it starts getting to sunset, the sun can still be really, really bright as well, which can also be challenging. And you have to consider a lot of things to manage. There's still a lot of harsh shadows and a lot of harsh highlights, and it can be kind of challenging to manage it a little bit. The thing that I struggle with the most when it comes to sunsets is if I try and shoot direct sunlight, it can look pretty orangey and very overwhelming. So that's something that I definitely struggle with. I do usually lower my kelvins for my sunset shoots just to make sure that they look a bit more balanced and they don't look absolutely crazy. Of course, again, you can change it afterwards in your camera settings, but it is definitely easier. One thing that I'll say is when it comes to shooting with any of these methods, it's very important to shoot raw because you have way more control over the highlights and the shadows, and it's something that your JPEGs won't give you. I recently shot some JPEGs, and while you can still edit it no problem, it's definitely a bit more of a challenge, and it just doesn't give you as much control of your images as it would with your RAWs. So I definitely recommend that you shoot raw. Another thing is I usually start shooting probably an hour before sundown, and then I shoot throughout blue hour. Recently, I've been shooting some flash photo shoots as well at the beach, which I really, really love. I think it's my new favorite thing, and I definitely recommend that you guys try it out. Straight after sunset, when the light is still pretty strong, the photos look really incredible. You get a lot of sky in the shot, and you get the model really nicely exposed. I really, really love how they look, so I definitely recommend that as well. Okay, and finally, number 1, my favorite current light setup is backlight. And that's super exciting because I haven't really shot a lot of backlight. I have throughout my career, and they have always kind of been my favorite photos, but I never really put 2 and 2 together. They were always a part of a bigger photo shoot where I was shooting mostly direct sunlight. So I just never really realized that that's the photos that I usually like the most and that usually perform the best for me as well when it comes to social media and how people perceive them and if they like them and so on. So I recently did this photo shoot in Costa Rica with Kathi, as you see here, and it was actually early in the morning and we were going to shoot direct sunlight, but there was this really beautiful light coming through the leaves and we were like, oh wow, this looks really pretty. So we ended up going to this part of the beach and getting some shots done there. And as you see here, it looks absolutely beautiful. They are some of my favorite shots. The light is always relatively really easy to manage if you choose the right time of the day. It's also super nice in terms of the light that hits the model. You usually get a pretty well exposed image in terms of highlights and shadows. You don't get a lot of overblown things and it looks pretty balanced and not as boring as with the Overcast. You get a lot of rich skin tones as well, which is kind of an ideal situation. So a lot of the time when I shoot backlit, I always make sure that, again, I shoot either relatively early in the morning when the sun is still relatively lower in the sky. The lower the sun is in the sky, the better the images are going to look. So I always shoot for first thing in the morning or just before sundown. So whenever I shoot with backlight, I always make sure that I find an interesting background that works very well with that kind of situation. For example, with this one, we had a lot of leaves and the trees and foliage, and it was dispersing the light really beautifully, and it was giving us a little bit of a light at a time, and it wasn't too overwhelming. So that's definitely something that I recommend. The worst thing you can do is be at the beach that is open, there's no trees, no nothing, and then you're trying to take backlight photos. If you're in a situation like this, I usually just kneel down and try and get my model's head in front of the sun. So this is definitely something to consider, just having a tiny bit of light coming in and just having it hit the model's back, hair. It's going to create a really beautiful highlighted frame of my model, and it's going to give your subject a really beautiful glowy look that I really like. Okay guys, that's it for today. Let me know what you think about my scenario from 1 to 4. Do you agree with me? Are there any different ways you would arrange this list? I hope you did like this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys next time.